Hello and welcome to our first lecture for the Forensic Anthropology course. My name is Denise Ambresco-Maida, but you can just call me Professor Ambresco, and that's how I'll sign off on any communications with you guys. That'll make it a little bit easier. So by this point, you guys should have done the activities in the Get Started or the Start Here, and that includes watching that first PowerPoint that I posted. With just some general course information, as well as completing that icebreaker activity. I know everybody loves an icebreaker, but we have to do it. It's how we know that you're able to get into the discussions for the course and utilize that area of Blackboard. So just that you guys are aware, the discussions are really for your peer-to-peer contact, because obviously we are not together in a classroom this semester. So that being said, I do check in to the discussions to make sure you guys are completing those activities, but it's very much geared towards you guys communicating with each other or talking to each other. If you guys have direct questions for me, the easiest thing to do is to drop me an email. You should see my email all over the place in Blackboard. It should be on the home page. It should be in that first module, that introduction. So if you guys have direct questions for me, that's the best place to do that. Because while I will check into the discussions, I'm not there to sort of moderate that. That's really for you guys to communicate with each other. You guys should also have a copy of the syllabus that was uploaded. So all of the course materials, syllabus, things like that, links, those will all be in each individual module. Certain things I'll also put in course resources just so that you have it there too, in case you need it. So you'll see as we get into the course, you should have your book. This is probably going to show up backwards for you guys, but the Human Bone Manual, that's going to be really helpful. I also have a great link, and I'm going to put that in the module, but I'll also put that in course resources, to a online website that does like 3D images of the human body, so you guys can take a deeper dive. Typically what we'll have in this course when we do it in person is actual access to the bones, so you guys are able to touch and feel and see all of the landmarks that I'll talk about. Since we don't have that in an online course, that interactive website will be really helpful for you guys, so definitely utilize that as much as you can. So as we go through the online course, I'll also put up extra things on there. So you guys will have a weekly assignment. That's a 2-part assignment. It's part of the discussion, so you guys have to post in the discussion. And then we'll have a brief quiz every week. That just makes sure that you are kind of staying up to date on all of the material. And then you guys have a book report at the end. That's the Beyond the Bone Farm book. So make sure that you guys have that. Certainly start reading that now, and I will touch base with you guys a little bit later about the format for that book report. So let's jump in today with some very sort of introductory things to the course. We're going to talk about some basic human anatomy terminology that's really important for you guys to know, so that you guys can kind of get a handle on all of the things we're going to see. So this is a difficult course because there's a lot of really weird, complicated Latin terms to name all of the things that we're talking about in the human body. The one thing that I always try to remind my students is that once we get some of those basic terms, like, a foramen, you're going to see that term a lot. Foramen literally means hole. It's a hole in the bone. So if you guys are able to associate anytime you see the word foramen with hole, you know that you're looking for a hole in the bone. And then other anatomical terms, superior, anterior, inferior, posterior, those things you'll all see. I'm going to cover those in just a second. But you'll find as we go through the course that scientists are pretty lazy. They've literally named a landmark on the bone for exactly what it does or looks like. It's a superior foramen. It's a hole at the top of the bone. So if you can get these sort of basic anatomical questions down, that'll make your life a whole lot easier as we kind of move forward in the course. So one of the things that I'm going to talk about right away, and it's hugely important as we especially get into our appendicular skeleton, our arms and legs, is standard anatomical position. So, just so that you guys are aware, your anatomical terminology starts in your book here at chapter 6, and that's on page 67. We do have a nice diagram on page 70 of the human body. I don't think this is an awesome example of standard anatomical position, so I also have it here. So, as you guys are looking at this, and I'll also upload this into our course materials, you'll see how the arms are. The arms are the biggest issue with standard anatomical position, because without us being in standard anatomical position, we can't identify some of these bones. So, facing forward. Face forward. The arms are held out so that the thumbs are pointing outward. Okay? So you see how he's holding his hands and his thumbs are out. That's important because I may ask you how the thumbs are oriented to the body. Okay? So the thumbs are always pointed out, palm forward. That is standard anatomical position. So when we talk about the body, this is the form it always takes. Okay? So, palms forward, thumbs facing out. All right. So that is standard anatomical position. Okay? So we will start to see some of these general terms. I'm also going to quickly talk about the planes of the body. So you can see those here. Okay? And planes mean literally if we were to chop you in half. So if I was going to divide the body into equal portions, left and right, okay, that is a sagittal plane, okay, sagittal, okay. Sagittal plane divides the body into equal portions, left and right, okay. Now, if I was going to divide the body into equal portions, front and back, you can see in your book, that's the coronal plane, okay. So front and back, equal portions, coronal plane. Okay, so we've got our sagittal that's dividing us this way, our coronal that's dividing us this way, and then at any point in the body, anywhere we want, we can take a transverse plane. So anywhere. It's just cutting the body this way. Does that make sense? And so you should be able to see that here in your book. They just happen to have this transverse plane dividing right around his belly button, but we can move that anywhere and get a plane of the body. Okay? Some other terms that we want to talk about. Okay? So those terms are going to start on page 68. The term superior. Okay? Superior basically means above. Okay? So if we're looking at a bone and we say the superior, we're looking at the top. Okay? Thing closest to the top or towards the head, right? Superior means towards the head on the human body. So the head is at the top. It's the most superior. So any bone where we're talking about superior, okay? So if we say something like a superior angle, it's going to be the angle at the top of that bone. Inferior is just the opposite. It's the lowest part, okay? So if we talk about an inferior angle, we're talking about the part at the bottom of the bone, okay? So superior is above, inferior is below. Anterior and posterior are also important. So your anterior is your front, okay? So if we're looking at the anterior side of a bone in standard anatomical position, it's the part that's facing the front, anterior. Posterior, so sometimes your rear end, your derriere, is referred to as your posterior. Your posterior is the back, okay? So anything facing towards the back of the body is posterior, okay? So far we have superior, inferior, anterior, posterior, okay? Medial and lateral, okay. So that sagittal plane, okay, that divides your body into left and right, can also be referred to as the midline, right? In the middle of our body, our midline, okay? So anything that's closer to the midline is considered medial, okay? So what might that mean? In standard anatomical position, your pinkies are medial, right? Because they're closer to the center of the body, okay? Medial. Whereas, what's our next term? Lateral, sorry. Medial is closer to the midline. Lateral is further from the midline. So our thumb would be lateral, okay? So if we were to draw a line right down his center, okay? So anything closer to the midline or the center would be medial. Anything further away would be lateral. Oh, I'm going to keep him out. So we also have the terms proximal and distal. So proximal is close, okay? And again, all of these terms are on page 68 in your book. So proximal is close. So if we're looking at this bone here, okay, this is our humerus. You guys don't need to know that bone yet. We're going to get to him later. But in terms of the terminology, proximal would be this point here, because it's the closest to attaching to the main part of the body, right? It's proximal to the body. And this here at the elbow is distal, okay? Proximal, distal, proximal, distal, okay? So I know there's a lot of terms. Don't worry, you guys will start to get it. I'm just going over them very quickly so that you guys, sometimes I feel like it's hard to read those terms in the book and actually be able to visualize it, okay? So this is me putting some visuals to the terms in the book, okay? So these are some of your basic anatomical terms. I'm not going to go over every single one of these. Let's see. For those general, let's stop there. Motions of the body. I'm going to go over 2 motions of the body because I think that they're going to come in really handy later when we get to the appendicular or the appendages. But I will definitely touch on them again. I think some of these you guys can visualize on your own. Extension, flexion, you extend, you flex. We know how to do that. Okay, so if you look on page 72, I'll give you guys a second to get there. Right at the top, you'll see terms, they're listed C and D, okay? One is abduction and one is adduction. So abduction, abduction, okay? Abduction, with the B, is when we move something closer to our body, okay? So it's this motion. If my arms were out, okay, and I'm taking them and moving them. Oh, sorry. Oh, goodness. Let's put a pin in that and rewind. I just lied to you. That's okay. We'll fix that. Okay. Abduction, abduction. This is how you need to think about it. And I didn't do this, so take a pause. If we abduct somebody, abduct, we take them away, right? We abducted them, we've kidnapped them, we've taken them away. So I just told you the wrong thing. When we abduct, we move away, okay? So this is abduction, okay? Because I'm abducting my limbs away from the center of my body, okay? If we adduction, okay, we're adding them back to the center of the body. So abduct, take away, adduct, add, okay? If you guys have ever worked out at the gym, you've seen that machine that you use for your thighs, right? So when you go this way, you're using your abductor muscles because you're taking your legs away from each other. When you do the squeezing, you're adducting because you're adding them back together, okay? So we did a little rewind, but we fixed it, okay? So abduct and adduct, okay? Let's not worry about those terms for the hands and feet right now. General bone features. This is something I definitely want to go over with you guys. So I'm going to go through them really quickly, but you have them here, and you're going to see them over and over and over again. So it certainly is worth your time and effort to try to get these general terms down, because they're going to make your life so much easier later on in the course when you have to know landmarks, because they typically will use all of these terms. Okay, so a process, an eminence, okay, a spine, a tuberosity, tubercle, trochanters, malleolus, boss. Okay, those are all terms. So it's condyle, epicondyle. Those are all terms for some sort of protrusion or bump. Okay, so they're all a little bit different. Okay, so a process and an eminence are usually sort of smaller bumps where we're going to see a muscle might be attached. Okay, a spine is typically a bumped or raised area on a bone that's long and thin. Okay, so these are all areas of a bone that are raised. A tuberosity, a tubercle, and a trochanter are usually bigger and rougher. Okay, so these are big, rough areas that we see on the bones. And these are typically areas where larger muscles are attached, right? We're going to see tuberosities, tubercles, and trochanters on a lot of our appendicular skeleton because we have these big muscles, right, that are used to get our limbs around. Malleolus is usually like a rounded, more smooth bump. I don't really see a lot of the term boss being used, to be totally honest. Condyles and epicondyles, okay? Those are areas where two bones meet, okay? So the first ones we're probably going to talk about are here at the back of your skull, where your skull meets your vertebrae. But we're going to have them in our knees, in our elbows. So those are very smooth areas in their joints, okay? So again, that first dozen or so terms are all kind of projections, eminences, bumps, whatever you want to mentally think about them. So we're going to see those terms come up. So anytime you see one of those, you're looking for something that sticks out of the bone. Okay, so like a bump or something like that. A nice one too are, there's one right at the back of the skull. You should be able to feel that bump. There's also some like right here behind your ears. Those again. So processes, bones, trochanters, tubercles, those are all bumps. Okay, all of our long bones, our arms and legs, have a head and a shaft. So the head, so if we're looking at, let's use our little humerus as an example, the head of the bone here, right, is this rounded area, that's the ball and socket that fits into our shoulder. The shaft, or diaphysis, okay, is this long, the entire shaft. And then, let's see, I'm not going to touch on every single one of these. The neck of the bone, you'll see in our humerus, we've got a rounded area, that's the head. Right behind that is the neck. So you've got a nice round area that comes down into a thinner area behind it. That's the neck. Let's see, ridge, crest, line. Those are all exactly what they sound like. It's a ridge, it's a crest, it's a line. Not to be confused with the spine. Spine is usually much larger protuberance, but in that same vein, a ridge, a crest, a line. Depressions. So again, I'm on 74, and I will say I am going through this pretty quickly, so definitely follow along in your book. All right, so fova, fossa, fovea, groove. Those are the three we'll see a lot, and those are exactly what they sound like. They're a shallow area in the bone, like a depression in the bone. Let's see. Sutures, we'll see a lot of suture terminology in the skull. So your skull is actually made up of multiple bones that will fuse together in adulthood. And so those areas where the bones have fused together is called a suture, which would make sense because if you were to cut yourself and you got stitches, that's also referred to as a suture. So that's the area where those come together. Foramen, canal, meatus, those are all holes. So if you see a hole in the bone, it's a foramen, it's a canal, it's a meatus. So you're going to see those terms come up again. Okay? So, and that's where I'm going to end the lecture, or this lecture, so that you guys have time to kind of digest that, rewind if you need it. The book is a really good resource, but just start kind of grouping those terms together, I think is important. I would definitely say you don't need to know these verbose definitions, okay? These definitions are really, 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 really technical. For our purposes, knowing that a tuberosity and a tubercle are bumps is enough. I would categorize them that way so that mentally, when you see a term like, let's see, external occipital protuberance, right? We know that external means on the outside. We'll get to the occipital bone. A protuberance is a bump, right? So I would just group them. Bumps, grooves, holes, and then the body positions. So anterior, posterior, superior, inferior. Those are going to be your key takeaways from this particular lecture. Okay? I will see you guys back at the next lecture. We are jumping into the cranium. All right. Have a great day.